episode of Bad Takes in Football. I am your host, Bad Takes. Excited to get into the Week 6 slate of games. We'll also be talking about some of the trades that happened around the NFL, potentially some other trades that I could see happening. Let's let everyone dial in. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I'm on my road to my first 100 subscribers. It really helps me out, and it's free for you to do. It really helps people find this channel. I want these live streams to be a place where we can interact, engage, chit-chat back and forth. Tell me your takes. Tell me if my takes are bad. Let's go back and forth. I want this to be a fun place where we can talk NFL football. So go ahead, dial in. Let's go ahead, get active in chat. Tell me what you think about this week's games. We'll let some more people dial in. But before we do that, again, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Also, make sure you like and comment on this live stream. It helps people find this live stream. YouTube is a crazy world. There's so much going on, so it helps get through that algorithm if you like and comment on this video as well. But like I said, we'll get started very shortly. While we're waiting, any of those trades that happened yesterday, what do you guys think about those trades? Do you think Joe Flacco is going to have an impact on the Cincinnati Bengals? Like I said, we'll be waiting a couple more minutes. And we'll go ahead and get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about the slate of football games. The first game that we're going to be talking about today is the Thursday night football game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants. So this game is going to be played in New York, and we're looking at a 4-1 team, the Philadelphia Eagles, who just came off of a loss, as well as a 1-4 team, the New York Giants, who gave the New Orleans Saints their first win of the season. So one team 1-4, the other team 4-1. Again, both of these teams are coming off of losses, and the Eagles, they're a team that is obviously hungry. They lost to the Broncos, who are probably one of the better teams in the AFC, especially right now. You look at who is generally at the top of the AFC, and you generally think of teams like the Chiefs and like the Ravens. Both of those teams are having down years right now. The Baltimore Ravens more so than the Chiefs. But again, the Broncos are a really solid team. That game was in Philadelphia. You don't really see a lot of teams go into the bank, go into Lincoln, and really take on a team like the Philadelphia Eagles and beat them like that. That does not happen very often. So again, this is a game where both teams are going to be hungry. Jackson Dart, he did not have a good game whatsoever last week against the New Orleans Saints. Sorry, I keep saying the New England Patriots, but Jackson Dart did not play well against, the New Orleans Saints. He had, 2 interceptions, and then he also had a fumble as well in that game. They had 5 turnovers overall on the Giants side. Cam Scotabo had a fumble as well as Darius Slayton. So Jackson Dart was responsible for 3, Cam Scatterbo had 1, and then Darius Slayton had another fumble. And really that's the biggest reason why this Giants team lost to the Saints. Now, going against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, they have a much better defense. One of the most interesting matchups when I think about this game is what it's going to look like when you're seeing Cam Scatterbo run against this defensive line and these linebackers of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter should be very busy trying to wrap up Cam Scatterbo. This is a runner that gets most of his yards after contact. He is known for lowering his shoulder, getting into the defender, and just trying to keep pushing the pile. And so again, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're going to have their hands really busy with a running back like a Cam Scatterbo. The one aspect of this game that I'm really curious to see is, what does the passing game of the Giants look like, again, without Malik Neighbors? We're seeing Darius Slayton get more touches, but again, losing someone like a Malik Neighbors, who was looking like one of the top receivers in the NFL this past season, that's going to have a major impact on this Giants team. And I think we're seeing that. I think we saw that last week. I think Jackson Dart, some of his mistakes came from the fact that, he's used to having a wide receiver 1 type like a Malik Neighbors that can go up and get the ball and generally finds himself being open. Again, I do like this run defense going up against the Giants. I think this is a very tough matchup for the Giants, even though this game is in New York. I think the Eagles are really going to try to force Dart to throw the ball a lot. Jackson Dart, he had 40, throws. He had 40 attempts last week against the New Orleans Saints. I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhere between 40 to 45 attempts against the Eagles for a couple of reasons. One, again, I think the Eagles defense, if they're really trying to game plan against the Giants, you're going to try to force Jackson Dart to throw the ball because, again, he doesn't have his number 1 target. And Cam Scatterbo, if you can keep him, harnessed, if you can minimize the yards he gets after contact, it's going to be really hard for this Giants team to move the ball on a regular basis. And so that's a matchup that I'm really excited to see. The other thing I'm also really curious to learn more about is Saquon Barkley. I don't know if anyone's seen this, but Saquon Barkley was not practicing this past practice yesterday. And one of the reasons why I want to talk about this is the fact that he really hasn't had that good of a year this year. I'll pull this up really fast. I'm going to take a look at the stats, where he is in the rushing leaders book, because right now I don't even think he's anywhere close. So when I'm pulling this up, Saquon Barkley, he's 22nd right now in the league in rushing. Those numbers are not going to cut it for what they really expect and what they need out of Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts has been the leading rusher for the Eagles a couple times, and so I'm kind of wondering, is this a lingering issue that Saquon Barkley is dealing with? Like, has this knee been an issue throughout this season? Because he had a solid game in week 1, but we're seeing games where he's rushing for 30, 45, sometimes 50 yards in a game. And that's not like the Philadelphia Eagles. That is not like Saquon Barkley. Again, they expect someone like him to really have an impact on this offense. A.J. Brown already isn't happy with the amount of touches he's getting. And so you'd expect a lot of those touches to be to Saquon Barkley and a lot of that production be coming out of Saquon Barkley. But you're not really seeing that. It's a lot of Jalen Hurts running the ball. That you're seeing the most out of. Like, let me pull this up. Let me see if I can find Jalen Hurts on this list. 1 second. I have a feeling he's going to be close to, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is 33rd in the NFL. So Jalen Hurts has 182 yards rushing. And again, Saquon Barkley has 267. When you think about how this compares to the leaders in the NFL, Jonathan Taylor has 480, James Cook has 450, Javonte Williams has 447 yards, right? So there's a huge disparity between the production that Saquon Barkley had last year and what he's really been able to accomplish this year. I was taking a look again, like I was talking about those averages. He's averaging 53.4 yards a game. That is not going to cut it. That's not what Saquon Barkley should be doing if this Eagles team wants to consistently win. I've talked about this when it comes to the Eagles. They remind me a lot of the Chiefs from last year, where they weren't winning big, right? They weren't blowing teams out of the water, but they were just finding ways to win games and win games in weird ways. They've done that already this year with a couple field goal blocks, return for a touchdown, just the tush push, the fake tush push. There's just so many ways that they've found to win games that, are not fun. Like they're not conventional. They're not your normal ways you see good teams win games. They just have a winning culture. Jalen Hurts is one of those quarterbacks where he's not going to throw for 300 yards just for the fun of it. He's just not. He's one of those guys where he does whatever he needs to do in order to win the game. And so in a game like this against the Giants, I do expect him and Saquon Barkley to be running the ball a lot. If Saquon Barkley is healthy, again, that's something we have to be looking at is does this impacted the Eagles moving forward, this knee injury? Because again, I don't feel like Saquon Barkley is his normal self. I'm not sure if anyone else feels that way. Tell me in chat if you think Saquon Barkley is 100% this year, or if teams are just keying against him and forcing them to pass the ball. But on top of that, with Saquon Barkley being a question mark, this is another game where they really have a good opportunity to try to get A.J. Brown involved in the game. A.J. Brown, he was very vocal about how unhappy he is with how these games have been played and his performance in these games. None of this fall to himself in these, in these talks. But, he had 43 yards last week. Like, that's not a lot. That's still not something where it's like, okay, I'm back on track. This is the A.J. Brown we know. Like 43 yards is not a lot of yards for a number one receiver, especially for a receiver at the caliber of an A.J. Brown. And so again, I'm really curious to see if Jalen Hurts tries to focus on getting back on track with A.J. Brown. I saw a note, who knows if this is real or not, but it sounds like Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, and A.J. Brown met Monday evening to try to figure out how to get this offense back on track. I can imagine that conversation from A.J. Brown's side is saying, hey, you want to get back on track? Throw me the ball. And Saquon Barkley is probably saying, hey, let me run the ball, right? Like, I don't think that Saquon Barkley is a selfish player, but A.J. Brown clearly is. He's been very vocal about the fact that he doesn't care about winning or losing. What he cares about is his performance and dominating his matchup. And so, again, Jalen Hurts meeting with A.J. Brown, like, what else could be said other than, hey, just pass me the ball? So again, I think the Eagles get back on track in this game. I see the Eagles winning this game 27-17. Again, when you enter in here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Again, I'm on my road to my first 100 subscribers. It really helps me out. Also, make sure to hit that like button. Let's help some other people find this live stream. Again, I want this to be a fun place where we can all banter and just talk NFL football. So when you get in here, get active in chat. Again, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me about what you think about this week's games. Let's have some fun today. Next game we're going to dive into, and this game I won't spend too much time on just purely because we're talking about one of probably the worst teams in the NFL right now. I'm talking about the Denver Broncos are traveling to New York to play the New York Jets, right? So we just talked about the Giants. They're 1-4. The Jets are 0-5. They have a brand new head coach in Aaron Glenn. They have a quarterback that I would consider now at this point to be a journeyman quarterback. He's on his third team in 4 or 5 years and just hasn't really seemed to have found a home or found a good fit for Justin Fields. And so the one thing that you just have to keep in mind if you are a Jets fan is this is a pretty young team. They do have young talent in Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Jalen Carter, sorry, not Jalen Carter, Quinnen Williams, right? They have a really solid edge rusher as well. Sauce Gardner, you obviously have young talent in him. So this is a very young team. And so 0-5 right now, it might seem like it's the end of the world. And I know Jets fans, you're probably used to this by now. You thought Aaron Rodgers was going to be, the second coming of Christ. And, that clearly didn't work out for you. And so I know you're used to this. But this is going to be another game where I just see I see a lot of challenges for the Jets team, right? Again, they are a young team, and that has shown in these first 5 games. They haven't really been able to put together one solid game. They really haven't. The Jets, they'll put together a solid quarter or 2, potentially even 3 in a game, right? I think a good example of that would be week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Jets looked really good through the first 3 quarters and then seemingly let the game go. But again, this is a game where I expect to see those same sorts of challenges. That is because this Broncos defense is the real deal. This Broncos defense with Nick Bonito, who's leading the league in sacks, also having Patrick Surtain being a great shutdown corner. And, I expect him to be following Garrett Wilson around the field. It's really going to come down to, can they get more production out of Breece Hall? Breece Hall, he's been a solid running back for the Jets, even throughout this season. He's 7th right now in rushing at 351 yards for the season. They're going to need a big game out of him if they want if they want any chance of beating the Broncos this week. Truly, like this Broncos team beating the Eagles in Philadelphia, that is a true show of how good this team is. And again, they have the offensive weapons as well on their side. They have Cortland Sutton. They have J.K. Dobbins, who's having a great year at running back. J.K. Dobbins is 5th in rushing this year. I don't think anyone would have expected that going into the season. But J.K. Dobbins has 402 yards rushing this year. Those are numbers that you should be very proud of if you're the Broncos and if you're J.K. Dobbins. And again, I just love this combination of Sean Payton and Bo Nix. They just seem to have like a rhythm. They seem to understand each other. I think that Sean Payton really truly understands, Bo Nix's strengths, and he's playing to those. And he knows the type of team they are. He's not trying to do anything that this team is not. They really stay inside their lane, which is, running the ball with JK, and then, dinking, dunking a little bit over the linebackers. And then every once in a while, trying to throw a big breaking pass to either Cortland Sutton or Tim Patrick. That's really what this Broncos team has been doing. And it seemed to have worked out. So when it comes to, what I expect and who I think will win this game, I think the Broncos will win this game. I think they're going to have a little bit of a hangover after playing a game like the Eagles and facing a team against the Jets. Sometimes you can get a little bit lax. You can go into this game, after a heavyweight fight and say, like, this one should be easier, and you let up a little bit. So I think the Broncos will win this game 24-17. Again, when you enter in, please make sure you like this stream. I want as many people to find this so we can talk some football. That's why I made that the title of this show. Again, I want this to be as engaging as possible. Also, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Again, I'm on my road to my first 100 subscribers. We're more than halfway there, so it would really help me out. We'll dive into the next game shortly. Again, before I do that, any comments on the trades that happened last week? What do you guys think about Joe Flacco going to the Bengals? Is that going to help this Bengals team out at all? We'll talk more about them in a little bit, but again, feel free to comment in chat, subscribe on this video. So let's go ahead and dive into the Cardinals versus the Colts. And, the Cardinals have not been the same team since they lost James Conner. I think that is a very obvious, observation. For me, they've lost the last 3 games, and those are the games that they've been without James Conner. And I don't think that this was like a top team in the NFC or in the NFL whatsoever. but at the same time, they were playing much better the first couple games of the year before James Conner went down. And so I think that's going to be a huge factor for this team. I also saw, their head coach Gannon. Their head coach Gannon got fined by the team itself for how he reacted to DeMarcado's fumble right before the end zone last week. I think that's pretty crazy. Like, is it Gannon? Let me pull his Cardinals head coach. Let's go ahead and pull this up real fast. Yeah, Jonathan Gannon is his name. So, he got fined $100,000 for how he reacted to Amari DeMarcado's fumble. I've never really seen that happen before, and I know he's a young coach, and so that's not really a good start you want to have, especially with a team like this. The locker room is such a sacred place. It's such an important part of a team being successful. And if Jonathan Gannon is going to do things like that to players, you're going to lose not just that player. You might also lose the respect from other players. Like, you don't treat adults like that. He is a true professional, Amari DeMarcado. He is a professional running back in the NFL, and you treated him like a child. And so that's something that I think I'll be curious to see, does the team rally around Jonathan Gannon, or do we start to see this team start to splinter? I think that's going to be a really serious question to ask is, how do the fans, or not the fans, how do the players react to this? Because again, this has become in the public eye. This could have just been something as simple as it happened on the sideline, then they move on. But he got fined. He had to address the team and apologize to Amari. And so, again, this is something that this team is talking about. And, again, they're not they're not in a rhythm right now. They're not playing well. And so, again, I'm curious to see how the Cardinals team really responds to what's happening. On the other side of this, the Colts have just been an insanely, consistent team. This Colts team is the real deal. They're 4-1. Daniel Jones is playing near to an MVP level quarterback. He truly is. If it were me, I would put probably Baker Mayfield as my number one. I think Puka Nacua would be pretty close, but then it would actually probably be Daniel Jones as one of those runner-ups for the MVP. And again, we've talked about rushers. Jonathan Taylor is right there as well. He's the number one rusher in the NFL with 480 yards. He's averaging 5.1 yards a carry. So that means every 2 carries he's getting a first down. Those are numbers that any team would love to have from their starting running back. That is the recipe for a high-powered offense. Again, you add Tyler Warren, who's his leading receiver right now, who's a rookie tight end. There's so much hope. There's so much promise behind this Colts team. And so when I look at this matchup, I just really find it hard to understand where, the Colts could lose this game. The Colts are putting up 32.6 points a game, where the Cardinals are scoring 20.6 points a game. That's a huge disparity. That's 12 points a game. And so again, I just don't understand how the Cardinals could win a game like this, especially when, from a defensive perspective, the Cardinals are giving up 19 points a game, and Indianapolis is putting up is allowing 17.8 points a game. So they're giving up less points than the Cardinals, and they're also scoring more than the Cardinals. And that's through 5 games. This isn't just a small sample size anymore. This is truly who these teams are becoming. And so again, I don't really see a way for the Cardinals to win this game. It's going to have to be a Marvin Harrison Jr. show in order for that to happen, in my opinion. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is starting to come on. He had some really crucial drops that turned into interceptions, and it was really impacting him. You could see his confidence falling. But the last couple games, he's really started to turn it back on. And so again, if the Cardinals want to have a chance in this game, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to have a career game. I think the Colts win this game. I see them winning this game 28-16. Next game we're going to talk about. So the Los Angeles Chargers are traveling to Miami to play the Dolphins. Now, The Dolphins haven't actually been playing as terribly as what their record shows. Let me just say that right off the bat. The last couple weeks, the Miami Dolphins, even though they're 1-4, have been playing much better. Their one win is against the New York Jets, who are 0-5. But in their loss to the Patriots and then their loss last week against the Panthers, like, they weren't playing completely terrible. Now, I will say losing to the Panthers says a lot about your team. Like, I don't think this Miami Dolphins team is a good team, right? Let's just say that right off the bat. And I'm also really concerned about Mike McDaniel. Have you guys been paying attention to these Mike McDaniel press conferences? I know he's sort of like aloof and kind of like this spacey guy in general, and the way his brain works, it's like super, like, you feel like he just kind of, he's like a Matthew McConaughey. I think that's the best way to put Mike McDaniel. He's like a Matthew McConaughey, where like he's talking and then he just like grabs at phrases or comments or says things that and you're kind of like, where did that come from? But right now, it doesn't even look like he knows how to complete a sentence. Like he looks like a senile old man out there just trying to figure out how to complete a sentence. And I think he's at a loss for words because he doesn't have the answers right now. I think that's the true and honest aspect of this, is the fact that Mike McDaniel is lost as the head coach of this Dolphins team. Without Tyreek Hill, you become a little bit less dynamic, right? They still have really good weapons in Waddle and Devon Achane. But at the same time, Tyreek Hill is someone that every defense has to account for because of his speed. And so it makes defenses play a little bit more aggressive. It allows them to say, hey, they're not just going to blow the top off of us every single play. We can take some chances. Now, on the other side, let's talk a little bit about the Chargers. I am concerned about the fact that Omarion Hampton is now down, because they are without Najee Harris already for the season. Omarion Hampton is on IR. And I don't know if you saw my video from earlier today. I think the Chargers, because they are true Super Bowl contenders in my opinion, and they're very viable options for becoming, or for being, the AFC West champions, they need to trade for a running back. Now, my opinion was, and my thought was, Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb would be a great fit from Houston. One of my friends, Ashton, who commented on the video, he also brought up Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara would also be a very viable option. But the Chargers not having a run game right now, it's essentially Hassan Haskins is their run game. That does concern me. I thought they were going to pick someone up off of the streets, and as far as I know, I don't think that's happened yet. I think it's still just essentially Omarion Hampton, Hassan Haskins as their running back. Yeah, like they still only have one running back essentially that's active on this Chargers offense, and it's Hassan Haskins. Like, they have to trade for a running back, in my opinion, or pick someone up. I think Nick Chubb is the best option for them. Again, Alvin Kamara could also be a really good option, but they need to maintain being a balanced offense in order for Justin Herbert to be successful. If you essentially just make it so Justin Herbert's going to be passing the ball 40 plus times a game, that's going to lead to teams just rearing up, getting and coming after him on a regular basis. It's going to cause a lot more blitzes, which I would say Herbert has struggled with in the past in his career. I'm not saying that's going to be the case this year. He seems to have, really stepped it up a notch in his play and his ability. But again, they really do need a running back to stay competitive, especially in this AFC West. Again, right now the Chiefs are 2-3. The Broncos, they're 4-1. They're looking really good. And so watch out for the Chiefs. They might get hot. They're going to get Rashee Rice after this week. And that could be a huge addition for this team. It does concern me with the Chargers as well, the fact that Joe Alt is injured. He's still listed as questionable. And so this offensive line, they lost Rashawn Slater at the beginning of the season. They can't afford to lose Joe Alt for a long period of time. That's going to have an impact not only on the run game, but then also on this pass game as well, and protecting Justin Herbert. So again, this isn't going to be as clear-cut of a game as you would think just on paper, just because of these injuries that the Chargers are facing. The Chargers are also coming off of their second loss in a row, And I think that's going to be the most telling aspect of this situation. I think the Chargers are just way too good of a team. Even though the Dolphins are desperate, I just think the Chargers are way too good of a team to lose 3 games in a row. I know your past 2 performances aren't a tell for what's going to happen in the future, but a head coach like a Jim Harbaugh is going to find a way to win this game. He's not going to allow this team to lose 3 games in a row. They're just not. One of the other names that I expected, and I wouldn't be surprised if they picked up, would be Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards has been a long-time running back for Greg Roman. He was on the Chargers last year. He knows the system. I think he would be the best fit for it. So we'll see what happens. They haven't made a move yet. I'm surprised they traded for an edge rusher in Odafe Owe and let go of their safety, Alohi Gilman. But again, to me, the run game is going to be the biggest question mark and thing I need to see from the Chargers. Just based off of the fact that I think the Chargers team overall is a better squad. And I think this Dolphins team is going to start spiraling soon if they already haven't. Again, Mike McDaniel seems lost out there. I think the Chargers win this game 20-16. Let's go ahead and dive into the next game. We're talking about the Patriots and the Saints. So the Patriots coming off of a big win against the New York Giants, and the Patriots also having a huge win Sunday night against their division rival, the Buffalo Bills. Stephon Diggs finally got his payback against the Bills, who he was very unhappy with before he got traded out of there to the Houston Texans. Now, obviously, again, Diggs is now on the Saints or on the Patriots. And one thing I'll say just on the topic of Stephon Diggs is it seems like he has really gotten into a rhythm and started to get very comfortable in this Patriots offense. You know, Drake May, he's been very consistent as a quarterback. He did have one game where there was just way too many turnovers, whether that was through interceptions or fumbles. But other than that, he's been very consistent. And so having a wide receiver one like a Stephon Diggs is going to be extremely crucial for this Patriots offense, especially because of the fact that they just don't have a run game. You know, Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson both cannot figure out how to gain yards in the run game. I'm not sure if this is an offensive line issue. I know they're very happy with Will Campbell at left tackle, you know, the rookie tackle that they drafted out of LSU, but that's not the whole offensive line, obviously. But again, I'm just not seeing a run game, which is not something you would expect from a Mike Vrabel team. Maybe, you know, Vrabel was most successful in the run because he had a Derrick Henry in Tennessee. But again, at the same time, you expect him to be really focused on that fundamental side of football, and the run game is a crucial part of that. And so again, having Stephon Diggs getting into a rhythm with Drake May is a huge value add for this Patriots team, especially since we're not really seeing the production out of Demario Douglas. Anyone else notice the fact that Demario Douglas has seemingly fallen off for the Patriots? I'm not really sure why. He seemed to be Drake May's favorite target last year. He's a very quick and shifty wide receiver that's really good with yards after the catch. I'm not even seeing him getting opportunities. Like, I'm not even seeing them looking at it, like looking to throw the ball to him. Now on the Saints side, you know, I will say Spencer Rattler, he's proven myself wrong. He's proven everyone wrong. He is a consistent and a solid quarterback right now in the NFL. Like, I wouldn't put him in the top tier, but he's looking like a middle of the road quarterback right now. He's not making a lot of mistakes, and he's getting the ball down the field. He has 990 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 interception on this season. And that's all with a 67% completion percentage. Again, those aren't crazy numbers with yards, but he also doesn't have insane weapons to throw the ball to either. So you have to be happy with that if you're the New Orleans Saints. And, you know, Tyler Shuck is probably sitting there wondering, like, am I ever going to get a shot here in New Orleans? Because they drafted him 2nd overall last year. You know, Rattler's 1 year ahead of him from a draft perspective, and he was a 3rd round pick. And so, again, you have to wonder what they're going to do about their quarterback situation. You know, again, they did win last week, And Spencer Rattler, he was 0-10 before that win. So he just got his first win of his career in the NFL. Now, going into this game a little bit more, the Patriots, again, they had just won a huge game against the Bills. They're a very young team. They're very inexperienced. So are the Saints. But for some reason, I just have this feel, and I think it's because this game is in New Orleans, and I think Spencer Rattler, he finally got an understanding of what it takes to win a game in the NFL, and call me crazy, I think he's going to repeat it. This is probably my boldest prediction, and maybe it's not even that bold, but I think the Saints actually beat the Patriots this week, and I think they win this game 23-20. I think it's going to be a close game, a hard-fought battle, but I actually expect Spencer Rattler to have a good game in this game, and I expect them to beat the Patriots again 23-20. So that's probably my biggest upset of the game of the week from a week 6 slate. What do you guys think about that? Anyone have any thoughts on the Saints this year, on how Spencer Rattler has played, or if you think that the Saints will beat the Patriots? Again, make sure you chat, make sure you like, comment, tell me what you think. Let's have some fun in chat, guys. All right. Let's talk about the Browns versus the Steelers. So, obviously, biggest news out of the AFC North was the fact that the Browns traded away their former starting quarterback who lost his job. Joe Flacco was traded to in-division, in-state rivals, the Cincinnati Bengals. First off, you never see in-division trades like this, especially at the quarterback position. That just doesn't happen. There's a huge conflict of interest when you see trades like that. And so I'm kind of shocked that the Browns did that, first off. What that tells me is they decided to move on from Joe Flacco completely, in the sense that even if Dylan Gabriel didn't play well, they were planning on playing Shedeur Sanders. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I know people made a big deal about Shedeur Sanders being the third string quarterback last week on the depth chart, but it's obvious now that they were always planning on playing Shedeur Sanders, even if Dylan Gabriel either got hurt or just wasn't playing well. So that aspect to me is a weird one. So diving into this game, I think the most important stat when it comes to this, there's actually two. It's Mike Tomlin is 14-4 when coming off of a bye week in his first game after a bye. He's 14-4. That is an insanely good record. That is a record that just tells you, like, hey, you do not want to face Mike Tomlin and the Steelers team after a bye. They game plan, they come in well rested, and they win these games. Now, on top of this, another crazy stat is Mike Tomlin is also 26-6 against rookie quarterbacks. So you put those two stats together, that's just like the perfect combination and recipe for the Steelers to win this game. Yeah, you're not wrong, Ashton. Win streak for the Saints. I'm predicting 2 in a row. You heard it from me. Don't get mad. I predicted it. Saints are going to win that game 23-20. But anyway, back to the Steelers game. The odds are just straight up stacked against the Browns. They don't have Joe Flacco as their safety net anymore. Dylan Gabriel, he did have a really good game, I will say, last week. It was a much better start than what I expected. He had 190 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and that's what you really need to see from a rookie. I also love what Quinshon Judkins has continued to be able to do as the RB1 for the Browns as well. Quinshon Judkins, he didn't have a preseason. He did not have like a training camp. He had one practice before week 2 against the Baltimore Ravens, and then has gone out there and he's done nothing but produce. In the 4 games he's played, he has 347 yards and he has 2 touchdowns. Again, all without a preseason. I think Dylan Gabriel and Quinshon Judkins, they actually might have the ability to give this Browns team a jolt of energy, give a jolt of hope and excitement, because this is actually young talent that might be able to produce for them for years to come. There hasn't been a lot for this Browns team to be excited about really ever since they traded for Deshaun Watson. And this is something that they could actually get behind and believe in. If they get some more talent at wide receiver, their offensive line is getting old. I'm definitely concerned about that. But I do think this is a Browns team that is better than people think. And again, because of this young talent, they do have a little bit more hope around them. So going back to this, I do think this is a game where the Steelers end up winning this game. I think they're just going to game plan too well. The Steelers defense is their strength. They don't have a good offense whatsoever. I think PFF rating has Aaron Rodgers rated as like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and they're really seeing that on the field. I do think that Denzel Ward is going to give DK Metcalf a really tough game in this game. But again, I just think the Steelers are going to be coming too prepared. I think they're going to cause some mistake from Dylan Gabriel that's going to cost the Browns this game. But I do think it's going to be a close one. I actually expect the Steelers to win this game 21-20. Again, I think it'll be a close game. I think it's going to come down to a rookie mistake from Dylan Gabriel, and the Steelers will win this game 21-20. Let's hop into another matchup in the NFC. We are talking about the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Carolina Panthers are coming off of a win against the Miami Dolphins. This was at home. This was a comeback win, and Rico Dowdle was the story of that comeback win. And Rico Dowdle came from Dallas, actually. Rico Dowdle ran for over 200 yards last week. And that was really the biggest difference. I will say Bryce also played better this past week. He connected on two touchdowns in the air last week. I think that's a huge aspect. Xavier Legette actually showed up to the game. I'm surprised that Xavier Legette even knew that he was still on the Carolina Panthers. That guy has looked like he had no idea or had any interest in playing football this season, these first couple weeks. I saw a guy that was disengaged, uninterested, and just didn't care. Like, his mentality just seemed to be like, I don't want to play football. Like, it was very odd to see. Now, what I will say, we talked about Rico Dowdle. It would be really fun to see him have a matchup against the Cowboys. I don't think there was like some bad blood or anything like that, but Rico Dowdle, if he were to have a big game against his former team, that'd be a lot of fun. The Panthers also have a chance for Chuba Hubbard to come back this week. I think that would be super helpful for the Carolina Panthers if they want to have a shot in this game. The Cowboys will also still be without CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is not expected. So I think this game might actually be a little bit closer than people expected. But what I will say is Dak Prescott is also playing at a near MVP level. He's having like a prime season right now. They had a bye week this past week, but they should be well rested. And they also have the third best running back right now in the league. Javonte Williams has 447 yards on the season. That has him as third in the season. So like, this offense, I think, is going to cause a lot of trouble for this Panthers defense. I think Carolina's defense is not going to be able to match up well against this Cowboys offense because of their run game. I think George Pickens is going to match up really well against a J.C. Horn. Like, George Pickens, he matches up well against anyone because he's one of those guys that goes up and gets these 50-50 balls and just makes the most crazy catches. Like, he's one of those guys that will make the most insane catch, and then you'll throw it to him on a slant route and he'll drop it on the next play. But again, I do expect the Cowboys to win this game. I do think it's going to be a close one. I expect the Cowboys to win this game 31-20. That's really where I see it going. But again, Dak Prescott, he had a bye last week. He's still second in the league in throwing, and I just don't think that the Panthers have enough answers, and I don't think the Panthers' offense is good enough to keep up with this Dallas Cowboys offense, regardless of how bad the Cowboys offense or defense is. Like, this Cowboys defense is not good. They've gotten lucky in games where they've caused turnovers and shown up exactly when they need to, but I don't think they're going to need that this week. Again, Cowboys win 31-20. Let's talk about a matchup that I don't think a lot of people would have been excited about going into this season. This is a matchup, again, I think if this was week one, you're like, hey, Week 6, Seahawks versus the Jaguars. That's going to be a good game. I don't think there's anyone that would have been excited about that. I wouldn't be. I don't really know anyone besides a Seahawks fan or a Jaguars fan that would be excited about this matchup. But these are two really good teams that are matching up, and it might be actually one of the better games of the week. They don't see each other a lot, right? They're on opposite sides of the country. They're in different divisions, different conferences. And so a lot of times that can cause teams to be unfamiliar with each other, and you might see things out of both of these teams that you wouldn't expect. One thing I will say from the Jags perspective is I'm a little worried about their run game against the Seahawks defense. I think the Seahawks run defense is one of their stronger suits. And so Travis Etienne, they're going to have to get creative in how they provide opportunities to Travis Etienne. I expect him to be running, off the edge a lot. I see, not down the middle. And I expect him to be involved more so in the passing game as well. Because again, the Seahawks have a really stout run defense. And so that's one of those matchups that I'm really curious to see. Now, both of these teams also have really solid wide receiver ones. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think, is one of the best receivers in this league. He's super young. He just knows how to get open, and he has great hands. Like, those are the strongest suits of Njigba's. He finds the open field, and he catches like every ball. He's not insanely fast. He's not insanely athletic, but he just knows how to find the open spots in a defense. And then he catches the ball essentially every time. Now, on the other side, you have Brian Thomas, who I would say is not having the type of season that he would hope for. I think Brian Thomas is definitely having what I would consider to be a down year. But Jackson Smith-Njigba is second in the league right now. He has 534 yards on the season. And then again, you look at someone like a Brian Thomas. Let me pull this up really fast. He's much further down this list. Brian Thomas, he's 43rd in the league with 244. And so this is a game where, Trevor Lawrence, I think he gained some confidence with that win against the Chiefs. I'm going to be really curious to see how he does finding, Brian Thomas out there. Because I think that's going to be a huge aspect of whether or not this Jags team is successful against the Seahawks, is if Brian Thomas has a really good game. On the other side, Sam Darnold has looked extremely solid against in the NFL overall. Sam Darnold, even in their loss against the Bucks, he threw for 341 yards. I'm going to pull this up really fast. Sam Darnold right now is 7th in the league in passing. He has 1,246 yards, and he has 9 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Like, those are numbers that any team would be happy with. And this was a guy that, even after having a good year with the Vikings, ended up on a different team. And so the Seahawks have to be so happy about that pickup. And again, I think this is going to be one of the best matchups. I think Darnold is a guy that doesn't make nearly as many mistakes, but Trevor Lawrence, even though he is much more, he makes a lot more mistakes. It's fumbles, it's interceptions. Like, he does have the ability to make more plays. And so I think the Seahawks will win this game, and I think it's going to be a close one. Again, I think this is going to be one of the better games of the week. I see the Seahawks winning this game 24-21. Let's dive into another game between cross-country, cross-division, cross-conference. I'm talking about the Rams versus the Ravens. So the Los Angeles Rams are coming to Baltimore. Both teams are coming off of losses. The Ravens, though, are just in so much trouble. I have zero, and let me just say this in case you haven't known. I am a Ravens fan. I try not to be biased about them, so I don't talk about them as much as a fan, but I am a Ravens fan. And I can tell you this as like a media person, as a Ravens fan, both. I have zero confidence in this Ravens team right now. This Ravens team, first off, they made 2 moves yesterday that concern me for a couple different reasons. And I talked about them in a video I posted earlier today, but I'll talk about them now briefly. They picked up 2 defensive backs in C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Alohi Gilman from the Chargers. So they picked up a safety, and they picked up C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's generally a safety now, can be seen as a cornerback. but they drafted Malachi Starks in the first round. And they also made Kyle Hamilton the highest paid safety in the NFL. Why do you have to pick up 2 defensive backs, like 2 basically safeties, if those are the moves you made in like this season already? Like, is Malachi Starks not doing what you need him to do? Is that who's the liability on this Ravens defense? I mean, if that's the case, like I was unaware of that. But that's scary because, again, you wasted a first-round pick on that guy if that's the case. The other aspect of this is maybe Kyle Hamilton's injury is a lot worse than what they've been saying. You know, Kyle Hamilton, he was held out of the game last week against the Texans. And, you know, maybe that injury is a lot worse than they want to tell people. The Ravens don't like to talk about injuries. They give you the most minimal amount of information as they possibly can without getting into trouble. And so, again, I just don't have confidence in this Ravens team. I think they look lost. They don't look like they have a good locker room environment right now. I don't know if there's like an issue between players going on or if it's players and coaches. I also don't know. I don't even know if like Lamar Jackson will play in this game. Even if he does, I don't think it's going to make a difference. Like, I think that's how lost this Ravens team actually is. And I haven't even been able to talk about, you know, the Rams. Like, the Rams, they have the leading passer in Matt Stafford, who has 1,500 yards, and then they have the leading receiver in the NFL, not shockingly, in Puka Nacua, right? So Puka Nacua has 588 yards on the season. That is a recipe for disaster for this Ravens team. It doesn't even matter the rest of it. Just don't even worry about the rest of it. All you need to know is that the Rams know how to pass the ball, and the Ravens can't stop the pass. Let me just pull up these numbers really fast on the actual defense. Let's look up passing defense, because I think it's going to be extremely scary and alarming. So let's just go through this. It's going to be bad. I promise you that. So yards a game, when it comes to giving up yards a game in the passing game, the Ravens give up, they're second in the league, behind, just ahead of the Cowboys. But they allow 262 yards passing per game. That is essentially 130 yards more per game than the number 1 team, which is the Atlanta Falcons. Now, when it comes to the rush game, let's just go rushing yards per game, right? Who seems to be the best from that perspective? Not the Ravens. I can tell you that much. The Baltimore Ravens are 4th to last when it comes to rushing yards allowed, with 146 yards per game. This is the Baltimore Ravens defense. Like, they're just absolutely atrocious. Oh, and let's just add on the fact that the Rams have one of the best pass rushes in the NFL as a team. They're going to have a field day, whether it's Cooper Rush or whether it's Lamar Jackson. The Los Angeles Rams are going to get after the Ravens quarterback early and often, because guess what? The Ravens offensive line is also terrible. We don't know if Ronnie Stanley's going to be out there, and if he is, if he's going to be healthy enough to play like to the top of his abilities. But he's going to have his hands full with someone like a Jared Verse, right? Braden Fisk in the interior. If he's going up against one of these guards, like, good luck. Like, Tyler Linderbaum, you're going to have to double team him. You're going to have to. And so, again, like, this is a recipe for disaster for this Ravens team. Even though this game is at home, I think the Rams are going to win this game, and I think they're going to win this game easily. My prediction might actually be too nice to the Baltimore Ravens, with the fact that their offense just can't, especially if Cooper Rush is the quarterback back there. I think the Rams are going to win this game 34-20. That's really where I see this game going. I see the Rams winning this game 34-20 in Baltimore. The Ravens go 1-5, and you're going to watch that organization really. You're going to really figure out who that organization is, and you're probably going to find out who the real trouble is behind what's happening. I don't think it's Odafe Owe. I'll tell you that much. I know Odafe Owe wasn't getting to the quarterback, but I don't think that guy was causing the issues that were causing the Ravens to be as bad as what they were. So let's get into this next game. Again, while you're in here, make sure you comment and chat. Tell me what you think about these matchups this week. What do you think about the trades that happened? Are there any more trades that you think are going to be coming up? Also, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Again, I'm on my road to my first 100 subscribers. All right, we got a couple more games left to go through. This next game we're not going to spend too much time on because guess what? It's two 1-4 teams facing off against each other. It's the Tennessee Titans are playing against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, neither of these quarterbacks are good. I'm sorry, Geno Smith. I really wish you would be successful because I hate to watch what happened to you in the beginning of your career. And I was so happy that you became a serviceable, if not a very productive quarterback in Seattle. But it doesn't seem to be working in Las Vegas. And I don't think that's completely your fault. But at the same time, you are the starting quarterback. They don't have a winning recipe in Las Vegas right now. You know, Ashton Genty, he had a really solid game previously, but again, this team is just not built to win games on a regular basis. Let me pull this up really fast. I wanted to take a look at Ashton Genty's stats. So he had 14 carries for 67 yards against the Colts last week. Now, this is after he had a much better game the week prior. So I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they lost that game 40-6, and so you're just not going to be able to run the ball a lot, which again goes back to my main issue when it comes to the Raiders. The Raiders, one, they don't have a good quarterback right now with Geno Smith. He is not playing to a good enough ability. He's making way too many mistakes, but they also just don't have a good defense. The Titans, now on the other side, they don't have a good quarterback either. Wow, sorry, that sounded weird. Like, Cam Ward is not a good quarterback right now. I'm not saying he won't be a good quarterback in the future, but Cam Ward is not looking like a first pick in the draft. He's looking like a rookie quarterback, I will say that, but he's not looking like a first pick in the draft. He's just not. You know, I'll pull up his stats really fast just so we can kind of talk about it a little bit. But again, it's not to the caliber that you're expecting from like a first pick in the draft. Where are the Titans in here? Oh, there they are. So yeah, let me pull his stats up really fast for you. Okay, so Cam Ward, he has a 51% completion percentage. He has 879 yards, right? And he has 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Do you remember when I brought up Spencer Rattler's numbers? Let me just talk about Spencer Rattler's numbers again really fast, just to kind of give you a quick comparison so you can understand like what I'm saying about Cam Ward and Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler has thrown for 990 yards, so he has 100 yards more than Cam Ward. He also has 4 more touchdowns and 2 less interceptions. Spencer Rattler has 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Cam Ward has 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Again, Cam Ward is not a good quarterback right now. He's actually one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL at this moment. And so I'm sorry, Titans fans, like, I feel like this was the type of pick where they made it just because they needed a quarterback, but he was not a number 1 pick sort of caliber. I think what people talk about when they talk about him the most is his leadership, and he's an alpha male. But it doesn't matter if you're an alpha male if you're not performing, right? Like, I know you expect greatness out of other people, but you're not even being great yourself. And so, again, this Raiders-Titans game, I hope this is just like a game where both of them try to get back on track. Like Calvin Ridley had a solid game last week. I hope Calvin Ridley can figure it out again this week. He had like half of his yards on the season came from this past week. That's kind of, yeah, no, I think it's exactly that. Calvin Ridley had, well, let me pull this up really fast. Sorry about this. Schedule. Let me just pull this up. Calvin Ridley had 131 yards of his 270 yards on the season last week. So he literally had half of his yards in one game. And so again, like, this is a game where I hope that, Ashton Genty gets more carries, sees more success, and I hope the Titans can figure out their offense a little bit more. I have a little bit more trust in Geno Smith than I do Cam Ward. So I actually see the Raiders winning this game 21-16. Next, let's talk about the Bengals versus the Packers. Now, the Bengals just traded for Joe Flacco as Jake Browning has been struggling. And, Jake Browning last week, he threw 3 touchdowns, but he also added 3 interceptions. And that gives Browning 8 interceptions on the season. So let's just say that he did not deserve to be starting anymore. Now, the fact that they chose Joe Flacco is just like a whole nother conversation. Obviously, he is a rental player. They're not expecting Joe Flacco to be their quarterback, moving forward in the future. That's obviously Joe Burrow. But if Joe Flacco is going to be starting for this team, I think it's just a recipe for failure for this Bengals team for one reason and one reason only. It's Joe Flacco is best at throwing the ball over the top, like deep bombs to his receivers. And he has good weapons for that. It's T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. The issue is they have a terrible offensive line. And I don't think that Joe Flacco is going to have enough time to be able to get the ball off to these receivers. They're going to have to be throwing quick passes, slant routes. I'm talking screen passes, whatever those might look like, quick out routes. That is going to have to be the game that the Bengals are going to need to play against this Packers team in order to get the ball down the field, because this Packers defense, they're going to be rearing. They're going to be coming after the quarterback early and often. They're going to want to get to Joe Flacco because he's not a mobile quarterback. And so Micah Parsons, he's going to be facing up against Orlando Brown Jr., and Orlando Brown Jr. does not deal with quickness well. He's a much more of like, I can handle strength, I can handle the bull rush, but when it comes to guys trying to get off the edge and bending around him, that's really where Orlando Brown struggles. And so I think this is a recipe for failure for the Bengals. I think the Packers, they're coming off of a bye week after tying the Cowboys. They're going to be well rested and they're going to be hungry. And they need to be able to keep up with the Detroit Lions, right? Like the Packers, they're a really good team this year, and I think the Packers, they need this win to continue to stay in this race with the Lions. And I think Jordan Love should have a big game against this defense, because we haven't even talked about how bad the Bengals defense is. The Bengals defense is one of the worst in the league. I know they're not as bad as the Ravens, I'll say that, but they're still one of the worst defenses. And so again, I think that the Packers win, and I think they win this game pretty easily. I can see the Bengals getting a couple touchdowns, maybe in like sort of garbage time. But again, I think the Packers win this game 28-20. It's just the perfect storm for the Packers. I don't know if Flacco will have enough time to get assimilated to this offense. He has been in so many offenses. Maybe he will, but I just think this is a recipe for failure for the Bengals. Next game we're going to talk about is the 49ers and the Buccaneers. So we'll talk about that in a second. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about this game. So, regardless of if Brock Purdy or Mac Jones is the starting quarterback for this 49ers team, they're a very good team. Like, they've proven that. Like, Mac Jones has looked like a completely different quarterback back there. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent right now, but let me just say this. The amount of proof right now that Bill Belichick was not the reason the Patriots were good could not be any more proven than right now this year. Between what Tom Brady did with the Buccaneers, how Bill Belichick has been just an absolute dumpster fire as the head coach of the UNC Tar Heels, and what Mac Jones has looked like in a Shanahan offense, right? Those three factors right there alone just show you Bill Belichick was not the reason the Patriots were good. So I'll stop that tangent really fast. I just had to get that off my chest because if people think Bill Belichick is a good head coach, you're stupid. I'm sorry. But again, regardless of if Brock Purdy or Mac Jones are playing, this 49ers team knows how to win games. And it doesn't even matter basically at this point who their wide receivers are. That's the craziest part. I've talked about the amount of injuries, whether it's Ricky Pearsall, whether it's Jawan Jennings, whether it's gosh, why can't I even think of his name? He hasn't even been able to play this season yet, right? Like they have so many receivers out. They are just such a resilient team that like they just know how to win. Like this 49ers team, if you're a 49ers fan, like you have to just show the utmost respect and love for this team because they just do not quit. Again, with all these injuries, Nick Bosa going down, right? They have all these people that aren't playing, and CMC and Brock Purdy or Mac Jones just keep this offense going. And Fred Warner is still a stud on that defensive side, and he is keeping this defense in lockdown, right? Like this team is the real deal. Now on the other side, this Buccaneers team, like Baker Mayfield right now is the MVP of the league. There's no doubt in my mind that Baker Mayfield is the MVP of the league right now. You're talking about 2 4-1 teams, and they've been playing in tough games. Like both of these teams have had the hardest parts of their schedules already. Like that is the crazy part about this aspect. And so I'm going to be really curious to see what CMC can do in this game because the Bucs defense, they are anchored by Vita Vea, right? And so I do not expect, the 49ers to be running the ball down the middle a lot. I think this is a game where you see CMC running to the sidelines, and you also see him very heavily involved in the run game. I think that's going to be the recipe for success for them. And the other aspect is, how does Baker Mayfield perform now that he has Emeka Egbuka and Chris Godwin? Emeka Egbuka is looking like one of the best receivers in the league right now. Like Puka Nacua, yeah, he's there. I'll put Puka Nacua at number 1, but I'd put Emeka Egbuka at number 2. I really would. Like that guy is extremely impressive. He's athletic. He's fast. He can catch the ball. He's great at running routes, and he just has a good head on his shoulders. I think he might come out to be one of the best draft picks in the draft class. I predicted he would be the best receiver in this draft class. Like that's not even a question anymore. 100% the best receiver in this draft class. But I also think he is going to be one of the best players out of this draft class at this point. Like that's how good Emeka Egbuka is playing. I think this is going to be a game where it's going to be back and forth because the Bucs defense, they give up almost 27 points a game, but at the same time they put up a lot of points as well, right? So I just think you're going to need to see a repeat performance from Baker Mayfield, from Emeka Egbuka. For some reason, I just have a little bit more confidence in this Bucs team. I know I've been hating on the 49ers. I've doubted them a lot, and I've put my foot in my mouth. Maybe I'm going to do it again. But I just think this is another game where the Bucs win. They just seem to be one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. Again, the 49ers, they've had big win after big win. They beat the Rams last week in LA. I just don't think this is going to be a game where they're going to be able to compete with the Bucs on offense. I think the Bucs will win this game 27-24. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think the Bucs win this game 27-24. Baker Mayfield will lead the Bucs to another game-winning drive where they kick a field goal to win the game. Let's talk about the last game of the Sunday docket. This is the Sunday night football game, and this, very different from what I talked about with the Seahawks and the Bucs, the 49ers and the Bucs, and then also the Seahawks and the Jags. This was a game I think everyone would have been a lot more excited about before the season started. I think there will still be, people will still be excited about this, but I'm talking about the Lions versus the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. The Lions are looking like the best team in the NFL right now. In my opinion, the Lions are the team to beat in the NFL. They said, who is Aaron Glenn? Right? We don't need you on defense. They said, who is Ben Johnson? We have a star-studded offense. They're putting up almost 35 points a game right now. Right? And they're only allowing a little bit over 22. So that is a 13-point disparity in between how many points they're giving up and how many points they're allowing on a regular basis. Now the Chiefs, they're averaging 25 points a game and they're giving up 21 points a game. When you do the math, when you look at this, it's a clear and obvious favorite. Like the Lions are the better team. And again, the Chiefs are still going to be without Rashee Rice. Now, the Chiefs are coming off of a huge loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. And so this Chiefs team is going to be hungry. They are 2-3, right? That is not a record that Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce are used to. The entire Chiefs team, like, that is not a record they're used to or expecting 5 weeks into this season. It just isn't. You're going to need to see Travis Kelce having a bigger game this game. He cannot be averaging, the 40, 50 yards a game he's averaging right now. Let me just pull this up really quick just so we can kind of go through it, because I think that's going to be a huge tell for how successful this Chiefs team is. Because again, the one thing about the Chiefs, to me, my biggest concern, my biggest kind of issue, I would say, with the Chiefs is the fact that they have like 3 of like the same type of receiver, right? Tyquan Thornton right now is their leading receiver with 272 yards. Hollywood Brown, he's got 257. Travis Kelce is third with 243. So Travis Kelce is averaging 48 yards a game right now. I don't think he is going to ever be near averaging 100 yards a game anymore. I don't think he'll ever be near 70 yards a game. But what I will say is if the Chiefs want to have any chance in winning this game, like, he's going to need to be their possession receiver in this game. He is going to need to be the, hey, go get us a first down guy. You're going to need 8-9 catches for 90-plus yards out of Travis Kelce if you want the Chiefs to win this game. Because, yes, the Chiefs do have a good defense, but the Lions just have way too many weapons. Even in just the run game alone, having Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery is like a cheat code. Like, they're two different types of running backs, and generally they're both successful, but if one isn't successful, the other one's going to be. Like, you never see both of these running backs struggle in the same game. It just doesn't really happen a lot. And so, again, this Lions team, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, right? Like, they just have way too many weapons that really make it hard for this Chiefs team to be able to keep up from an offensive perspective. Like, I think they're going to keep them a little bit hampered. But again, it's a pick your poison when it comes to this Lions offense as to who you're going to give the ball to. And I just think they have way too much confidence. I think they just have such a good locker room that, like, I just don't see the Chiefs being able to win a game like this. I think they're going to be desperate. Like, I think the Chiefs, you'll see a huge effort, especially out of Chris Jones. Chris Jones, that last play, like, I'm sure everyone's seen a clip of it where Chris Jones seemingly gave up on the play where Trevor Lawrence ran it in for a touchdown. The Jags ended up winning that game. You're going to see Chris Jones probably play harder than he ever has. I will say that. He's the type of guy that responds to stuff like that. But I still think the Lions will win this game. I think the Lions win it 28-21. That's really how I see this game going. And you're going to see a 2-4 Kansas City Chiefs team. That's going to be the crazy part, and the Lions will become 5-1. So that's it for me. That's the Sunday slate of games. Any takes that I've shared that you guys think are terrible? Any games that you feel like I missed the spot on? I'll give everyone a little bit of time to comment. Again, before I sign off, make sure you subscribe to this channel. It really does help me out, and it's free for you to do. Again, that's it for me today. Thank you again for watching. This is Bad Takes with Bad Takes in Football, signing out.